Alright, in these notes, our focus is really going to be how do we write systems of equations. Now, just to refresh your memory, I do want to go ahead and go over the formal definition of what a system of equation is. And a system of linear equations is when we have two or more linear equations working together. Now, the question today is, how do I write a system of equations? So I got 3 steps I've broken this up into. And if you follow those steps, it'll make it really easy. So step 1, it's the same as what we do anytime we approach a word problem. We're going to box all numbers, variables, and equations, and we're going to underline keywords. So for instance, it says tickets to a movie cost $7.25 for adults and $5.50 for students. A group of friends purchased 8 tickets for $52.75. Determine how many adult tickets were purchased and then give the total amount of student tickets that were purchased. Okay, so we want to know how many adults tickets were purchased and how many student tickets were purchased. Now, before we move any further with this, what we need to do is go on to step 2, which is assign X and Y to the 2 items being compared. So ask yourself, what is being compared in here? Okay, and we're going to say X is equal to something, Y is equal to something. And I'm going to say X, I'm going to call that the adult tickets. So that's adult tickets. And Y is going to be the student tickets. Now that we got that down, notice it did give us a value for each one. It says adult tickets are $7.25. So I'm going to say, okay, so this one is $7.25. And it said student tickets are $5.50. Now, with that information, we got everything we need to start creating a system. So let's go off what we know so far. We know, for instance, that a group of friends purchased 8 tickets for $52.75. And we know the adults are $7.25 each, and the students are $5.50 each. So that's a couple different things we know. So I'm going to start out by writing my first equation, which is they spent $7.25 times the number of adult tickets they bought, plus $5.50 for the student tickets they bought, which is represented by Y, and that cost them a total of $52.75. $52.75. Alright, so what I do is I have 725x, because it's $7.25 times the number of adult tickets, plus 550y, which means 550 times the number of student tickets, and that was equal to $52.75. Now, the other thing that I know that I can get out of this from reading it, it says the group of friends purchased 8 tickets. So what that means is, since they purchased 8 tickets, we can say on here that the adult tickets, X, plus the student tickets, Y, are equal to a total of 8 tickets. So now we have a system. We know the cost of each ticket and its total cost, and we know that they bought adult and student tickets and they're equivalent to a total of 8 tickets. Now what we don't know is how many of them were for adults and how many were for students. So, and that's what it's asking us to look for, how many tickets were purchased for the adults, and give the total amount of student tickets purchased. So this is where we're going to have to use one of our methods that we learned, either graphing, substitution, or elimination, to determine how many student tickets were bought and how many adult tickets were bought. So let's look at number 3. It says choose your method. Now I'm going to use my favorite method, and I know I've already told you in class my favorite method is elimination, and I think it makes it really easy to go ahead and solve that way. So I'm going to use that, and what I'm going to be multiplying by, so I'm going to multiply this bottom one because I feel like it's the easiest to go ahead and multiply out. I'm going to multiply by negative 725. Now if you're wondering, well, Mr. H, why are you doing negative 725? Well, because if I can turn this x into a negative 725, I can eliminate this x right here with a 725. And then we can solve for y. So remember, we do have to distribute that negative 75 to the x, which gives me negative 7.25. Distribute it to the y, which gives me negative, oh I'm sorry, I forgot to put the x, 7.25x. And then minus 7.25y, which is equal to negative 7.25 times 8. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not going to do that one in my head. I'm just going to get my calculator right quick and multiply that out. And in my calculator, if I go ahead and do negative 7.25 times 8, that gives me a total of $58. So $58 even. And that's going to be a negative $58. Alright, so we have our values here. I've multiplied it all out, so everything's been changed on it. So now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and from top to bottom, we're going to do some math. So remember, when we do this, we go ahead and we ignore what we started with momentarily, and then we work it out. So if I go right here, 725x minus 725x, those cancel because that gives me 0. And then here I have 550y minus 725y. That's going to actually give me a negative 1.75y. And then if I go ahead and say, well, 5275 minus 58, that's going to leave me with negative $5.25. Okay, so we're almost done. So now all I got to do is get rid of this coefficient of y, and I'll know how much a student ticket costs. So let me go ahead and divide by that coefficient, negative 1.75. Divide this by negative 1.75. Now remember too, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So these two will cancel out. You're left with y is equal to, and negative 5.25 divided by negative 1.75, that's going to give me 3. So I know now that the student tickets, while they cost $5.50 each, I know that they bought 3 tickets. So this will make it really easy to find out how many adult tickets. So I'm going to write underneath their student. So student tickets, there was 3. So they purchased 3 tickets. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to box this off just so to prevent any confusion. And I'm going to go ahead and go back and substitute that number 3 in place of y, and then we'll know how many adult tickets were purchased. So let me rewrite the equation. We have x plus y equals 8. Now, we don't know how many tickets the adults have, but what we do know is that y is equal to 3. Bring down my x. So all I got to do is subtract 3 from both sides. Those will cancel out because they equal 0. 8 minus 3 leaves me with 5. Bring down my equal sign and bring down my x. And therefore x is equal to 5, which is my adult tickets purchased. So that means they purchased 3 student tickets and 5 adult tickets. Now normally once we would do this, we would go ahead and justify it, and to make sure that it makes a true statement. And if it did, then we'd say our answer is correct. Now instead of me doing the justification by hand, because notice we used a lot of room right here, right? I'm just going to do it with my calculator. So let's check it with the calculator real quick and make sure that both of the equations show true. Alright, what we're going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and type in my equation. We had x plus y equals 8. So if I substitute my values for x and y, I said x is equal to 5. And then I said y was equal to 3. And then we said that equals 8. And if I hit enter, notice it says true. So that means that that one's good. That was real simple. Really didn't need the calculator for it, but might as well check it. So the other one is a little bit more complicated. We had 7.25x, and we said that x is equal to 5, so I'm going to put a 5 in there. And then we had 5.50 times y, and we said y was a total of 3. We had 3 student tickets. and we said that was equal to $52.75. So hit enter, and it shows true. So now I've justified my two answers using my calculator. Both statements show true. I know that my x and y value is correct, and therefore my solution for this is 5, 3. Okay, so I'm going to write my solution down right quick. We'll put here, we'll say x was 5 and the y was 3. And I'm done. So I'm going to move this up now. Hopefully you have all that written down. And then what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and solve this next one on your own. And let's see, can you solve it successfully? And remember, you get to choose your method. You could use substitution, you could use elimination, or you could use graphing. It's completely up to you. But go ahead and write it out. And then after you're finished and you think you got the correct answer, hit play and watch my video to see if your answer matches mine. Alright, we're going to go ahead and solve this. Let's take a look at it. First, we're going to do step 1. We're going to box all numbers, variables, and equations and underline keywords. At a sale on winter clothing, Cody bought 2 pairs, that's a number even though it's a word, of gloves and 4 hats for $43. And Tori bought 2 pairs of gloves and 2 hats for $30. Find the individual prices of the hats and the gloves. So we want to find both of them. Now, first step, right, after it's done, it's completed, then we go to step 2, which says assign x and y to the 2 items being compared. Well, what is being compared? Hats and gloves. So I'm going to go ahead and assign that real quick. I'm going to say x is equal to gloves. Now, it didn't give us a price on them. It just said that he had gloves. And then I'm going to say y is going to be equal to hats. Now notice our information is a little bit different on this one. It didn't give us an individual price for the gloves or hats, and we're going to have to find that ourselves. But they did give us some information that will help. For instance, Cody, he bought 2 pairs of gloves. So I'm going to say 2 times x, because 2x means 2 times gloves. Plus, he brought 4 hats, so 4 times y, and that cost him a total of $43. 43.00. And now we're going to write our second equation. Our second equation is Tori's equation. It says Tori brought 2 pairs of gloves, so it's also going to be 2x, and 2 hats. Okay, so 2 times y, and that cost Tori $30. 30.00. So here's our equations. Now I'm going to be honest with you, looking at this again, this is a perfect type of equation to use with elimination, because I can look at this and tell real quick, all I need to do is multiply one of these by -1 and I can eliminate it. So I'm going to go ahead and eliminate the one on the bottom, and I'm going to multiply the whole thing by -1. And I'm going to write my new equation underneath. Now the reason I know to multiply by -1 is because, right, this 2x right here, it's positive. So in order to eliminate it, I need to make it, this one down at the bottom, negative. So -1 times 2x gives me -2x. -1 times 2y gives me -2y. And -1 times 30 is going to give me -$30. Now at this point I am going to draw a line through the one that I just eliminated so I don't get mixed up. And now we're going to do math top to bottom. So -2x minus 2x gives me 0. 4y minus 2y leaves me with positive 2y. And $43 minus $30 leaves me with $13. Alright, now to solve for y, I want to go ahead and divide by my coefficient on both sides of the equation. And I end up with y is equal to, looks like that's going to be $6.50. So now we know how much each hat costs. Each hat costs $6.50. So I'm going to put cost of hats. Now, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and again, I'm going to kind of separate this by box. And then I'm going to go ahead and figure out how much the gloves cost. Because now that I know how much a hat costs, I can insert it in either equation and figure out how much the gloves cost. So what I want to go ahead and do is I want to put it into one of the ones that has smaller numbers. I like the one with the 2's. And so let me go ahead and substitute it for that one. So let's go ahead and write, we're going to write 2x plus 2y was equal to 30. Alright, now if I work this out, what I want to do is I know what y is. I know they cost $6.50, so I'm going to rewrite this as 2x, so that's 2 times my gloves, plus 2 times my y value, which is $6.50, is going to be equal to $30. So we can go ahead and distribute this. So we end up with 2x plus, let's see, 2 times $6.50 is actually going to give me $13. And that's equal to 30. So then I can subtract my 13 from both sides, minus 13. That leaves me on this side of the equation with 0, because those cancel out. Bring down my 2x. Bring down my equal sign. And 30 minus 13 is basically going to leave me with $17. And then what I want to do is I want to go ahead and divide by my coefficient of 2. That cancels out, and we end up with x is equal to, and it looks like 2 times 8 is 16, so it's going to be $8.50. So I'm going to box my answer. So that means gloves cost $8.50. I think that's kind of odd. It looks like gloves are more expensive than hats, but that's the cost of them. Now that we got this done, I'm going to use my calculator, and I'm just going to substitute both of these values back in for x and y and make sure that I have 2 true statements so that I can justify my answer and be certain that what I put was correct. Alright, in my first equation I had 2x plus 4y equals 43. So I'm going to say, okay, well 2 times my x, and say x is $8.50, plus 4 times my y, which we said the y was the cost of hats, and there was $6.50, and that should have been equal to $43. So I'm going to hit enter and see if it says true. And it says true. So far this equation is good. We're going to check the second one and make sure it says true as well. So then we had 2 times x, so 2 times $8.50, the cost of gloves, plus 2 hats that were purchased. So that's going to be 2 times $6.50. That was my y, and then that was equal to $30. And it also says true. So I've confirmed that my answer is correct, and I can move on to the next problem. So there you have it. You now know how to write systems of equations and how to solve them.